make sure that, that's kept in mind. So without further ado, I did want to introduce myself. My name is Murtaz Hussain. I'm your Florida District Treasurer. I'm currently a senior right now, and I attend Coral Glades High School in Coral Springs, Florida. And one fun fact about myself is that I've lived in South Florida all my life. So I'm definitely not a fan of cold weather. Definitely being a Floridian all my life. But yeah, no, if this is your first time joining Keys to Your Future, I definitely did want to introduce what this workshop series is. I'm sure many of you guys, this is you're joining us for our second installment. So Keys to Your Future is a years-long workshop series on financial literacy and professional development. The goal is that we want to present a workshop on a really key topic every month or two. We really just want to make sure that throughout the whole year, we do give topics that you guys are interested in. And definitely based on your survey responses on the first workshop, we're delivering the second workshop to you today. So, throughout the year, we do plan to present some topics such as essentials of budgeting and saving, consumer protection, job searching, resume building, interview prep, and many more per your request through the survey responses. And at the end of this presentation, we will share a survey for you all to fill out. So definitely looking forward to that. So many of these topics listed here today are going to be covered today, and one of these topics was covered last workshop. So once that workshop is up on the website, you can definitely access that as well. So without further ado, what is today's workshop? Today's workshop is key number 2, career readiness. So I'm really excited to share that this workshop will be presented by 2 Key Club alumni, Taylor Paddock from Ernst & Young and Rebecca Venner from Ernst & Young. Taylor Paddock was actually a former Key Club Division 4 Lieutenant Governor from 2013 and 2015. She went to Keystone Heights High School. So it's really, really exciting that a former Key Club alum is joining us today and giving us a workshop. So, that's a great embodiment of how Key Club joining Key Club, being a Key Club member, being a Key Club leader, the, aspect of service really just carries within you throughout your whole life. And today we have Taylor and Rebecca, who are former Key Club members, joining us today and delivering the workshop. So without further ado, I do want to pass it on to Taylor and Rebecca, and you can go ahead and introduce yourself and definitely share your workshop.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. And everyone, it is so great to be here with you. Seeing the chat and hearing about this workshop series has been very nostalgic for me. It's making me miss the energy of Key Club a lot. It was one of my favorite aspects of high school. And I can say that since having been in Key Club, I still stay connected with a lot of my district board friends that I made from that time. It's allowed me to have free places to stay throughout the country. That's a great perk of being involved in Key Club. But importantly, it taught me a lot of skills and character development that I have used throughout my time in college and in my career. The adults and the other students that you learn from in Key Club are great role models. And so that's just the influence it's had on my life. And I'm sure each of you will have your own stories. But today, I'd love to share with you about career readiness so that while I know many of you might be mid high school, late high school, preparing for college, preparing for a trade school, whatever that next step for you, I think career readiness is an important topic because this is how you'll be able to provide for yourself one day. And out there in the market, we want to make sure that you have the tools and the knowledge necessary to secure a job, whatever level you're at. So I will progress forward. So this shows myself, and Rebecca is going to present the second half of the presentation, and I'll be covering the first. And I went to school and studied business at the University of Florida, and I joined Ernst & Young right out of college. I didn't really understand what UI was when I was first being recruited by the firm. It was very exciting for me to learn about. And since then, I've gained a wealth of knowledge about public accounting and what it means to be a Big Four firm. So I'm going to share a little bit with you about that so you can just understand our background and the kind of career readiness that we're able to give you based on our field. So EY is one of 4 very large public accounting firms, professional services firms in the world. As an organization, we have 300,000 folks with us, and in the Americas, 75,000. Our global headquarters is in London, and our Americas headquarters is in New York City. And this is a great representation of just how global we are, but we do break ourselves down into local teams, which makes a large organization like this still feel like home. And we have various service lines and departments here at EY. And I think in Murtaz's introduction email, he mentioned that Rebecca and I are in the talent attraction and acquisition function. That is a really wonderful way to say in the recruiting function. So our job in TA squared is to recruit exceptional people to belong to our 4 core service lines. Those core service lines are assurance, consulting, strategy and transactions, and tax. And so in these core service lines, we hire folks that have educations that relate to accounting, to information systems, software engineering, and several other topics. But this is just a brief overview of the world that we're coming from and joining you here on this webinar today. So when you think about career readiness, it's important to know that wherever you go, whoever you speak to, whether you're on social media or in person, that you bring with you your personal brand. And that personal brand is something that is being built every single day, especially in high school. When you think about how high school might be like a microcosm of everybody knows you from these experiences and the work you've done and the sports you play and the organizations you're in, like Key Club. That still applies to the larger world. I can't tell you how many times I meet someone new and we might become Facebook friends and I'll realize somehow we already have 5 mutual friends. That just shows in this environment and forevermore, your personal brand is going to be very important. And I think I can leave that there. We do have some tips for each of you when it comes to managing that online presence. So while you might be on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, LinkedIn is a very popular social media site that is for professional networking. So whether it's on one of those social networks like TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, it's all still very easy to see, if somebody is looking to garner some information about you. So we wanted to provide these tips, and I'm sure the adults in your life might have hammered these tips home already. So I don't want to spend a ton of time here, but do know that as folks in corporate recruiting, we do look at all this stuff too. I will say we don't dig into people's private social media. We don't have time for that. But I will say that we do take a look at LinkedIn, and we do want to make sure that the people we're bringing into the firm are of the highest quality. So if you have any reservations about things that you might be engaging with online or posting, if you have a hesitation, odds are don't post it, don't engage with it. I think that's a good rule of thumb. And here are some stats. So we all like numbers, we all like percentages about digital media and how it influences the job search. And I think this stat regarding recruiters' use of LinkedIn is pretty true. You might see some recruiters frequent LinkedIn and posting. And one common thing are positions. So while you guys might not have started looking for your first job yet, when you do join a university, your university will have its own job board, just like LinkedIn has a job board. So it's basically a landing page for you to go and peruse through options. What kind of careers are out there? I think this is something people in high school don't access a lot, but I think should, because you're able to see what kind of careers are available, and you're also able to see what kind of majors they're looking for. So if you are planning to pursue a college education, it's important that you pick an education, one that you feel good about and you're excited to learn about, but two, that it's something that is able to secure, you're able to secure a job through. And so familiarizing yourself with positions that are available and what kind of majors they look for will be helpful for you. Okay, and we have 5 tips that we wanted to share, pretty general tips in regards to improving your LinkedIn profile. So, number 1, a professional photo. You don't have to go and find a photographer and pay one. All you have to do is stand behind a pretty basic background. I think a wall, or maybe a very generic nature scene behind you, maybe some grass in your backyard, and a photo of yourself there would be great for a LinkedIn profile. I don't recommend using selfies or things like that. Maybe a Snapchat filter. I wouldn't recommend that for LinkedIn, while it might be cute for something else. I do think headline summaries are very important. So understanding what you're pursuing and what you're looking for. It's very important to know what your end goal is when you're ready for a search. Keep your current roles and responsibilities up to date. I can't tell you how often we might engage with someone and maybe their resume is not up to date or their profile isn't up to date. And it's important for somebody who's looking to hire you to always know where you're at currently, what your current contact information is, your current role. And then having a customized profile link, that's great for adding it to your resume and having folks have the ability to look you up and have something simple to travel to. And then number 5, network. This is a fantastic skill. I think the more folks that you know, the better. I can say that if I didn't have a friend that I did going into college and coming out of it, I would have never even known that the firm I work for now was looking for somebody for the position I have now. And it was all because of that connection that I even found out they were hiring. So small example that impacted my life in a big way. And I think that's what people mean when they always hammer home that point of networking. It's about who you know. It's because those connections that you make will influence your life. All right. And now we are at resume tips. And Rebecca, I think this is when you are going to chime in with your wealth of knowledge. And if you could give a short intro too, I think that would be great.
Yeah, of course. So, hello, everybody. My name is Rebecca Venner, and I'm a recruiting coordinator for the state of Florida. So, I work really closely with Taylor on sourcing candidates, getting them placed, and getting them all the way through until they have their first full-time job. So, really fun work that Taylor and I get to do. I'm going to chat through some resume tips, some do's and don'ts, and kind of preparing yourself for when you're maybe interviewing or going to a career fair or something like that. To kind of bounce off of Taylor's tidbits about LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn. I never think that it's too early to start a LinkedIn page for yourself. Even if your only connection is your dad or your mom, that's fine. Look for companies that interest you, sports teams that interest you. Kind of follow those pages on LinkedIn so that you can stay in the know of what's going on in the business world, so that when you do interview and build your resume, you kind of know what those companies are already looking for. So to jump right into our resume tips, I want to start with this rhetorical question here, which is, on average, how much time do you think an employer spends looking at a resume? And some of you might be shocked to hear that it's really only about 20 to 30 seconds. And I'm not talking about a resume that comes into my inbox. I'm not going to give that a 20, 30-second glance. This is kind of in that more informal setting, like a career fair, where Taylor and I are talking to hundreds of students throughout the day. We only have really 1 to 2 minutes to kind of get to know you and your story before we determine whether or not we think that you are a match for one of our positions. So that 20 to 30 seconds is really important, and that comes from your resume. And we want to see right on the top that you've got your name, your contact info, and your education. Because if your timeline for school doesn't match up with our role, we unfortunately can't offer you a position. So when you're designing your resume, you want to keep those 3 things top of mind. If you can, you want to target your resume to your employer that you're interested in. For a career fair, this isn't typically the way to go because you're printing out a lot of different resumes, and if they're all labeled for different employers, there's an opportunity that you might get them mixed up, which does happen. We've had students hand us resumes that say, I'm interested in Deloitte, which is another Big Four accounting firm, and that's not the best first impression to make. You want to make sure that it is visually appealing, so not too cluttered, and 1 page. So if you're coming out of high school, applying for a part-time job, an internship, applying to college, and your resume is more than 1 page, I would consider asking your friends, your family, your teachers to help you kind of consolidate the information on there, because not everything that you do in your day-to-day at your job is important on a resume. We want to see the heavy hitters, the things that really teach you life skills. Again, you want to confirm that it is free of errors. Ask your parents, ask your friends, ask your teachers. As many eyes as you can get on your resume, the better, because when you hand a resume to an employer that has a lot of grammatical errors, we kind of start to see a red flag pop up. And then we look at your transcripts and it digs itself into a deeper hole. And then you always want to present the most important information first. So if I were to apply at an accounting firm and I had a background in Excel or in an accounting software, I would want to put that at the top so that when I hand my resume to a recruiter, it's the first thing they see and they know that I'm a legitimate candidate for the role. Same thing goes for colleges and universities that you're applying to. Put that most important information at the top, those leadership roles that you've had while you're in school, maybe some volunteer work that you've had while you're in school, anything to show that you've gained practical real life experience while you're in school is a great way to show that you're a good candidate. More essential information on your resume. Always include your contact information first, followed by an objective. This objective is kind of like the summary on LinkedIn, where you put what you want to do, maybe things you're interested in, your major, some passions that you have, and then you always want to include your education after that so that we can see right at the top when you're expected to graduate, what your major is, when you graduated high school, what your GPA in high school was, anything to kind of give you a leg up education-wise. Then you'll move on to your leadership and extracurricular section or your job section. So if you've had a job, that should go underneath the education section. Any job's a good job. So if you work in retail or customer service, anything where you get to interact with people day to day and have to work on a team, we want to see that no matter what the role is or the university or the position you're applying for. And then those leadership and extracurriculars are really great for showing us that you are excited to be on a team, you're excited to work with others, and you're engaging and ready to lead. Next, you'll want to include any other skills that you might have. So if you've received a certification or a scholarship, or you're just really into, again, I'm going to use Excel because we use it every day in an accounting firm, but you're really good at Excel and you've taken a lot of courses and you've received a certificate, those are great things to add. And then here is just a more pared down checklist of some of the top things to remember when you're creating your resume or giving it to a recruiter. You want to focus on organization and format. Again, keep to that 1 page if possible. Include keyword phrases. So when you're looking at a job description or a description for a position, maybe in one of your extracurricular clubs, you want to look for the keyword phrases and you want to make sure that you include those in your resume so that you stand out as a candidate that matches that background that we're looking for. You want to present your strongest qualifications first. So those leadership roles, again, very important. And you want to account for all time periods. So if you got your first job when you were a freshman in high school, you want to include that even though you're a freshman in college or a senior in high school applying to different positions. And definitely, this is the biggest one. Save your resume as a PDF when you send it. You're going to put a lot of time and energy into making this beautiful Word document that you're going to send to a recruiter. who's going to open it on a MacBook and they're not going to have Word and it's going to be all formatted wrong, or it's not going to look as nice. The words will be off. So if you save it as a PDF, you'll be mitigating that risk of sending somebody a resume that doesn't look professional. Another side tip for that one would be to always name your resume first name, last name, underscore resume, or last name, first name resume. We get a lot of resumes that are accounting underscore spring semester underscore final version, use this, and that doesn't come across very professionally, and it's hard for us to keep track of and sort those resumes when they're named as such. And your writing style. Always begin your sentences with powerful action verbs and use the correct tense throughout your entire resume. So if you're speaking in the past tense or in the third, you should always use that same format all the way through your whole resume so that it reads the same no matter what the position is. And use brief language and bullet points. You don't need to go into detail about the coworker that you worked with that you didn't like, but you got along with because it was work. You can kind of summarize that by saying that you get along well with others in difficult situations and you've been able to manage those effectively. And again, always really running this one home, make sure it's free of grammar errors, spelling errors, punctuation errors. I'm sure all of your English teachers would be more than happy to look at your resume. Your coaches on your teams would be happy to look at them, your parents, your siblings, your friends, as many people as you can. Get feedback and get feedback early so that once you do have that final resume ready to go and to send to schools or to employers, you know it's the best it can be. Okay, so once you have the resume all beautiful and ready to go, you're going to start applying to schools, applying to jobs, internships, and that typically leads itself to attending a career fair. Now, most of you probably won't attend an internship or career fair until you're in college, but it's good to start learning about those organizations that you're interested in ahead of time. So these are my 5 tips for tackling a career fair. My first one is to do research on the companies attending the career fair. Oftentimes, if you sign up for a career fair in college or you receive emails about it, the lineup of companies that are there is already going to be set well in advance. So do research on as many of them as you can. Don't always just look for those Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 companies that you've heard from a ton of times. Look into some of the smaller companies too, because you might be missing a big opportunity by limiting yourself to only the big names. Review your resume and print out copies to share with recruiters. Again, keep this one brief, clean, don't include the title of the companies, and make sure your contact information is up to date and correct. 3, dress for success. A lot of the career fair pages will also have dress code on them. Some are going to be business professional. Those are usually the in-person events, and some will be more business casual, which are the virtual career fairs that we're currently hosting and living right now. 4 would be to attend earlier in the day. So believe it or not, Taylor and I and our colleague Jess, we stand at those career fairs all day long for 8, 9, 10 hours, talking to hundreds and hundreds of students, trying to get to know who you are and where you would best fit within our company. And by the end of the day, it's a little bit fuzzy, we're a little bit tired, a lot of bit hungry, and we kind of just want to go home. So do your work, show up early, and try to get there so that you can meet with us early while things are fresh and we'll be more ready to remember you, and so that you have an opportunity to network with as many professionals from that company that are there at that time. If you come during the peak times of lunchtime or a little bit later in the day, you might miss the opportunity to chat with as many professionals. And this last one, which is more appropriate for all of you, are you too early or too late for a job or internship? No issue, always use it as an opportunity to network. If you go up to Ernst & Young at a career fair and we see that your graduation date doesn't line up with our positions, we'll tell you so, and you can come back with a, that's great, thank you so much. I'm still very interested in the opportunities at this firm, and I would love it if you could connect me with some more professionals so that in a year or 2 years when I am ready, I'll already have the foundation set. Taylor and I set up a lot of coffee chats between students and professionals to help them network early, so asking is never a bad thing. And then applying for positions. So as recruiters, we often see people applying to every single position that's available on the website for the firm. Be specific and intentional with your applications, whether it's for a leadership position in school, for colleges or for full-time jobs and internships, you want to ask yourself, do I see myself in this position? Do I have the skills and competencies of the position? Do I fit the brief for the job? And does this job align with my goals and my vision, their mission? So, for example, at Ernst & Young, our mission statement is to build a better working world. So I'm sure Taylor did, but when I joined, I heard that mission statement and I thought that that was a great thing. I want to join building a better working world. I want people to enjoy working. I want them to be excited to wake up and go to work. That sounds like a great place for me to work. And that's part of the reason why I decided to apply there. And then obviously format your resume to be specific to the role. So maybe not in the career fair setting, but when you are applying online to a position and you know who the company is and directly where it's going, it's always good to format your resume and cover letter for that role so that you sound appealing to that role. So again, read that job description, add those keywords into your resume, maybe change around your summary or your objective at the top of your resume to include the name of the company and the position name. And any information like that that you think it would be helpful for a recruiter to know when they're looking at you. And after applying online, I would suggest trying to connect with a recruiter. So if you're applying online through a school website, they might not always have the recruiter who posted the job. But if you're applying for a job through LinkedIn, 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to see the recruiter that posted that position, and you'll be able to connect with them on LinkedIn. So you might as well do yourself a favor, send them a quick note on LinkedIn, connect with them, let them know, hey, I'm interested in this position. I would love to, grab 10 minutes of your time just to talk about why I think I would be a great candidate, etc. And then always follow up. So if you've applied for a job, you've done your work, you've reached out to the recruiter and you still haven't heard anything and it's been a week or two, maybe closer to 2 weeks, a week and a half, reach out again, show them that you're interested in the position and that you bring to the table what they're looking for. You have a lot of things to offer and you're persistent in your approach. Don't take this one a little bit overboard though. You don't need to reach out more than 1 or 2 times, but always follow up when you have the opportunity to. All right, I know that was kind of quick, but Taylor and I did want to leave as much time as we could for questions because I'm sure a lot of you applying for roles or school have a lot of questions about how you can be more professional. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Feel free to drop them in the chat box, or if you feel comfortable, we would love to have you come off mute and voice your question. I see Taylor Fordham. Taylor, great name, by the way. Ray has raised her hand or his hand. Do you want to come off mute and share your question with us?
Yes, I agree. Taylor is a fantastic name. One of the questions I have is, you said on LinkedIn when reaching out to employers that you should show some persistence as well. Would you recommend doing this for multiple times for different companies as well, just continuously sending out and asking back and asking for more, hey, I really think I would be good? Or do you think you should sort of know when to not seem like you're crazy?
That's a good question. I think persistence does pay off, right? It's going to show that you're dedicated and you really want the position. But at the same time, most recruiters talk to a ton of people. So there might be quite a few folks in their inbox. And some recruiters, it depends on what you're looking for. If it is a position that you're qualified for and that recruiter is active on LinkedIn, maybe you saw that they read your message or something like that, I think it would be great to follow up to show some persistence there. But if you feel like the position might be a long shot and it's clear that the recruiter is not responding, I would say that LinkedIn probably isn't a popular source for them. For example, my firm we don't really post jobs or cold call people or reach out to people on LinkedIn. But every so often I'll have a great student that pops in my LinkedIn inbox and they're like, here's my resume and I'm really interested in a assurance position in Tampa. I'm like, oh my gosh, this person knows what they want. They found me. Maybe they heard about me from word of mouth. Okay, I'll dig into this one. But another type of message I get is, hello, tell me about EY. sorry. We don't have a ton of time to share about what our company does to random folks on the internet. So that would be a message where, a recruiter might not engage. So I would say that if you feel like you are pursuing something that's specific to you and something that you're qualified for, be persistent. But if you feel like it's a long shot, it might be, and it might be hurting your chances to be too persistent.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good question. Any other questions? Rebecca, you can feel free to add to that one too, if you had other thoughts.
Sure. So I would say if you are applying for a job and you're not hearing back from them and you've reached out, kind of given them feelers once, maybe twice, still haven't heard anything back from them. Maybe it's not on LinkedIn, maybe you've emailed them, they still haven't responded. I would say the chances of the opportunity still being available are probably slim at that point. If you've made those strides towards reaching out to them, maybe you aren't the best fit for that role from that recruiter's standpoint. And I would not get my hopes hung on that one position. I would try to, apply to other positions. However, if you have reached out and you've had maybe a couple messages back and forth with the recruiter about a position, or they've gotten back to you once, but it's been 3 weeks since they got back to you this second time, absolutely reach out again. People get busy, people lose emails, people forget, reach out a couple more times. That's okay. As long as they've shown interest or they've shown a desire to kind of help after you've reached out to them 1-2 times, I think that you should be good to go to just keep that communication going and keep growing your network through them. Even if you don't get that position, growing a relationship with your recruiter can be very beneficial down the line if another position does come up.
Thank you. Someone in the chat asked if we could show our idea of a good resume. I think so. I have a copy of my resume before I joined the firm. Becca, do you have an updated copy of yours that we could show?
I can probably find one.
Okay, great. And I saw someone raise their hand. So while Becca looks for her resume, would the person with their hand raised like to come off mute?
I'm gonna go ahead and assume that it was me who raised. I was raising my hand, but I wasn't sure. Sorry. I forgot my question. I am so sorry.
No worries. I do the same thing. It'll come back to you. No worries. One thing that we did not talk about yet is interviewing. I think right now, if you have to interview for a campus position, maybe you're going out for student government in the future, it might be virtual. I'm not familiar with what your specific school is doing, but I can say that for us, our interview process, no matter whether we're in Corona times or not, we do have our first assessment as a virtual interview. So this is a helpful tool that a lot of professional services firms are using. So the first step in the process for us is a pre-recorded video interview. We call it a PRVI, and what that means is you'll receive a series of questions and you'll have 5 minutes to respond to each question, and you make a recording. And we understand that first interview step can be difficult for some students because it's speaking to a computer. It's a little bit difficult. It can be awkward, and we're very cognizant of it. It's just a helpful piece of material for us to have to make decisions, opposed to just having a transcript and just a resume. And then our second step in the interview process are 2 interviews that are either live video interviews, which we're using right now, or traditionally in some years past without coronavirus, we've had on-campus interviews. So you'd have 2 interviews with somebody that is a partner or a senior manager from the practice and the city that you're interested in. So they're directly impacting the hiring decision, that partner or senior manager, and they're from that practice, and they know exactly what it takes to be a member of that practice and to be an employee. And they're going to ask you questions that are tailored to your past behavioral experiences. So the questions that are asked, what that means is behavioral based questions all relate to things you've done in the past. The reason is research shows that your past behaviors are the best indicators of your future behaviors. So the questions we ask relate to things you've already done. Tell me about a time when, tell me how you impacted this. And what I find most helpful for students that are going through a behavioral interview like that is to think about the things you've been involved in throughout your life. So for all of you, it will be Key Club. Maybe it's working outside of school at a local grocery store. It's being involved with student government, other organizations. Think about those experiences you've had through each of those things and how you've impacted them. I caught errors at my local grocery store and saved the grocery store $400 because I'm so detail oriented. I created a new service project because I love being involved in the community, and this is a particular area and a need in my community that I'd like to give back. And here's how I did that, and here's how I impacted that. Just as a prep for your interview, thinking about all those things you've done and writing it down, I think is most helpful. I mean, literally listing out Key Club. Okay, here's the things I did. Grocery store, here's the things I did. So that when you do get to the interview, you have just studied yourself. You have just thought about those things you've done so that when you're in the interview, you're not like, oh, what did I do? Who am I? I don't know. I blanked. If you study yourself the night before, a couple days before your interview, you won't blank. You're going to have those things right at your fingertips. And you're going to be able to speak to your experiences and to provide full depth into all these things you worked so hard for. It's very disheartening sometimes when you've worked so hard, you've done all the right things, but you just had a really bad interview. Whatever it may be, it can happen. I think this is one step though to preparation that can avoid that though. Okay. Becca, do we have a resume?
I do. I have my resume. This is my resume from before I started working at the firm. So context.
Oh, I'm excited.
I had you've seen this. Taylor interviewed me as one of my, yes, this is my resume from when I graduated school. So as you can see, front and center, I have my name, my contact information, and my education right up there. I studied communications and digital media. I went to Florida State. And then I put all of my experience on there. So my internships, my campus outreach programs, my hourly minimum wage jobs, my everything, whatever I could think of that I thought would be helpful for another professional person to look at and say, yeah, she's had experience. She's done all that she can. Looking at this now, I haven't looked at it since I was hired, but I would probably update the skills section, because if you put things like Outlook or something on that, Microsoft Suite, I think most people these days applying for jobs understand how to use Microsoft Suite. Probably isn't the most effective use of space. Now, if you got a certificate for learning how to use it, absolutely include that. But
yeah, I agree that certificates, that's cool. It shows you've obtained something, but skills, I mean, like anybody could really put that they have a great skill for time management, right? It doesn't really set you apart because it's something anybody could put, whereas your education, your experiences, your certifications, that's specific to you. And it takes some effort to obtain. I'll
And
share mine. Oh, go
I
ahead.
will tell you guys that I did get that from a template online. So scour Google, find a template that fits your personality, looks nice to you. Some of them, I think you can get some on Etsy for like $1, or you can find some. Canva is a really great online free tool that has a ton, like thousands of resume templates that you can fill in right from there and save as a PDF.
Yeah, I think those are all great resources. Whether it's at your current high school or where you pursue your education next, they likely have a career resource center. So for a high school, it might be part of your guidance department, and then in college they'll call it the career resource center. But that is designed to help you do this, like to make resumes and to find employers. And I know that they might not talk about it as openly. Like I remember during high school, my guidance counselor never mentioned resumes. But looking back, if it's something I would have asked for help with, I guarantee she would have been able to help me. And I just want to I'll share my resume because Becca's is like beautiful and artistic, and mine's super old school. So I developed my resume with a bunch of accounting students, and accounting students, as you can imagine, are very by the books, and so that's kind of how my resume looks. And what's going to be important for anybody that's reviewing it, they're going to want to see your education. All right, what did she study? Where did she study? And what are those experiences that person has had? Are they involved in things outside of work? What are those experiences like? Do they have any community service? Do they like to give back? Are they just part of organizations, or do they have leadership in those organizations? Are they involved in any honor societies related to their major? Or, for example, if you want to be pre-law one day and I'm interviewing you for a future JD internship, I would expect that you're going to be in like some pre-law honor societies and some things that show you're truly passionate about your career path. Okay. And I know we got some more questions. Becca, there is a person named Cheyenne who said, "I love Canva."
Girl, I use Canva every single day at work. I make unnecessarily beautiful email templates to send my coworkers.
She does. That's true. And now I'm trying to learn how to use it, and it's been fun. I highly recommend it. Christina asked, what should we include in a video resume, and how long should it be? So for us, for those video interviews, we let you know. We say, all right, we're going to give you 15 minutes. We'll give it to you in 3-minute increments. We're going to ask you 5 questions. The question will pop up. You'll have 60 seconds to think, and then 3 minutes to respond. And oh my gosh, you messed up. Okay, we'll give you a second try, and then you get to try again. But every interview will be a little different, especially if it's a recorded one. So I would speak to the person that's facilitating this interview experience for you, just to get some insight on what the individual process looks like. So, okay, what kind of questions should I prepare for? How much time will I have? Those should all be things that are letting you know as you're signed up for it. But Christina, I noticed you put video resume. And so if somebody is asking for you to make a video like a resume, maybe it's like a about you video, I would say that it almost reminds me of an elevator pitch. Like everybody's elevator pitch is basically a quick story you can tell about yourself that makes people think highly of you. That's why it's called an elevator pitch. So I would quickly touch on those key things that you've done that also support why you should, or why you are qualified for the role you're interested in. So, what experiences have you had that not only show you're a credible person and you've got a great work ethic and you're going to be a great team member, but they also show why for this specific position, you're the best person. I think resumes and interviews, they're truly about being your own salesperson. You need to show the person on the other side of the table that you are the best person for the job. Okay, but why? That's the question you're always answering when it comes to resumes, interviews, etc. You know, why are you the best person for this? A one interview tip I just thought of that I do want to share, and it's very simple, but it's about confidence. So studies show that people like people with confidence, and we're able to be our best selves when we are confident. So before you go into a big interview, whether it's in person or whether it's a virtual interview, stand in front of your mirror with your hands on your hips, like a superhero. It's called a power pose, and just kind of stand there and give yourself some positive affirmations. It's been shown to boost your confidence and to make you feel more capable. Okay.
I would add to that one too. I would say a long time ago, had a speech teacher that said, if you're preparing to public speak, always read your speech in front of a mirror. Read it to yourself so that you can see how you're acting and reacting as you're speaking. So if you feel in an interview like you're nervous talking to the person in front of you, I'll give an example. Taylor was one of the people that interviewed me. I got into that interview room. I have no idea how old Taylor is. I don't know how long she's been with the firm, anything like that. I was so terrified. Come to find out, we're very close in age. Taylor's very awesome, super cool. Why was I so nervous? So the more you can prepare and see yourself speaking and preparing for those opportunities, the better you'll be in front of anybody that you're talking to. So print out from Google the top 50 most asked interview questions, sit down in front of your mirror, it'll feel a little silly, and just run through your answers on them. Try to figure out a way that you can pull in 1 to 2 different experiences that are on your resume into your answer so that they know that you're constantly trying to tie back what you're saying to something that you've done, and that's factual and on paper.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Vivian from Coral Glades High School wants to know if there are questions that are most likely to show up in interviews. And I would say yes, they are all behavioral interview questions. So if you Google behavioral interview questions, a plethora of questions about your past experiences will show up. There's also one interview question that's pretty notorious. It's tell me about a time that you failed, or tell me about your biggest failure and how you improved. I personally do not ask people this. I don't like asking people it. I feel like it's a trap question. No one really has a great answer, but you might come across it in some of your interviews. So being prepared for that question is a best practice, just in case. Trent wants to know, do you have any other tips for preparing for the interview itself other than having the experience? So our Superman pose touched on this, and Becca's additional tips on confidence. Trent, let us know if there's something specific you're wondering. Yeah, Celeste and Elwood's video, I'm all about it.
If any of you with your hands raised would like to come off mute and ask your question, feel free.
I can kind of go ahead and ask my question if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a fair warning, I'm a little wordy, so I don't really know how to phrase this. I've been thinking about it for the past like 5 minutes, so I'll try my best. But in an interview, right, if you are the person holding it and you're interviewing someone else, what exactly are you looking for? Like, obviously you want to see that we're confident and stuff like that. And I've heard a lot since I'm a senior now and I'm like going into college and I'm obviously going to be looking for internships and stuff like that. I've heard a lot, like through my mentor, that when you go into an interview, a lot of what they're looking for is how you can hold a conversation too, like not just like showing off your experiences. So would you say that like you'd be looking more for like how I can handle myself in a situation like I think Rebecca said earlier, that's kind of like you never know, and you just how like you're handling yourself, or you like how we can like kind of frame ourselves, if that makes sense?
It depends on the interviewer. I would say what I look for. So if I'm interviewing somebody for a team that I don't have to work with every day. Like, let's say I'm in recruiting, but I'm doing an interview for an assurance intern. I'm going to make sure they're qualified. I'm going to make sure that this is somebody that I feel confident is so capable that when they are on the job and they're like, oh yeah, Taylor Paddock interviewed me, people feel good about that person being there. You know, this is somebody I could put my name on. But when I interviewed Rebecca and other people that are for my team, probably my top thought is like, is this person going to make my life better? Honestly, like the people you work with are so important to, one, your own work product, two, your morale. You know, is this person going to add happiness, or is this somebody that's going to be a drag on the team? Is this somebody that's going to be a go-getter and get it done, or are they going to be like leaving early and not helping, right? Like those are the things you think of when it's somebody that you're going to be working with every day, versus when you're having that conversation for somebody that you're not going to be working with. So that was my first example with somebody I'm not working with every day, but I do have to put my name on. And then the second is for somebody that I'm spending every day right alongside, a team member.
Yeah, I would probably say it's 50-50. So when you're applying to a job, you could be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't carry a conversation and you're looking for a job in business, you probably won't go very far. Not to say that there isn't a spot for you somewhere. So I think if you can come in and you can have a really strong presence and be comfortable in yourself, and you can share that while you're conversing with somebody and have really good conversation, that'll help that person interviewing you get a good idea of who you are, have a good idea of, like Taylor said, how you'll kind of act on their team. And as you're weaving in things from your resume that obviously help to support that person that you are, they'll be thinking, one, wow, they're really nice, and they're having a good conversation with me. It doesn't feel forced. And two, look at them. They can tie it back to things that they've actually done, which lets me know that they're on task and that they are interested in the position, and that we're not just going to talk about what we're doing this weekend for the entire conversation. You want to always bring the conversation back to yourself and your skills and competencies, while also being that friendly, outgoing, and personable person.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have two questions. So from before, Taylor, you mentioned that like it was about keeping up communication. Like you don't necessarily check your LinkedIn that often, but you brought up like if a person like sends you like a message and they're like really with it, they're like, hey, I'm interested in your company and you whatever, sorry. And I think I would be good at in this position. You said that you would like probably look into them more, and like how would you balance like being like kind of set on a position but like still open to other options, and also um oh, like things to ask your interviewer. Like I've kind of seen in across the internet, like yes, you're being interviewed, but they're like you should also ask your interviewer questions. Do you have like, is that a thing? Should we be doing that? Any example questions, question mark?
Okay, two great questions. The first one, I think it relates, I want to say it again just to make sure I'm understanding it, that when you do reach out about a position and you're on the ball, you're like, this is the position I want, but you also want to let them know that you really just want a job and you're still open to other options. Okay. I think that is something that changes from industry to industry. I'll tell you, in ours, if I meet somebody and they're like, I kind of like audit, I kind of like tax, so you could send me to Tampa, Florida, but I'm also interested in like Chicago or New York. My first thought, this person doesn't know what they want. This person might go to New York for 6 months and decide, oh my gosh, I got to come home. And then our company has to move them back to Tampa, or maybe we don't have a spot. And it just becomes a lot of work. So that's my first thought. But at the same time, there's different roles in companies where, okay, maybe this one role didn't work out for you, but let's consider you for something else. And I think that's what you're asking. How do you convey that you're open to other opportunities? And I think that you would just let them know what that other opportunity is and why you're also interested in it. So, maybe you're interested in we'll make this up, an analyst position that's in Tampa, Florida. But if that were not to work out, while that is your first preference, you're also interested in something similar, an analyst position in Orlando. I think that there's beauty in being open and saying that I'm open to anything. I'll do anything for this company, for this job. But there's also a beauty in knowing kind of what you want and understanding why you want that city, why you want that role. So I think it's finding a balance between those two. Was that helpful?
I think so, yeah. That made sense.
Okay.
All righty. Well, are there any final questions before we wrap up?
I think Sri's question had a second part.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Should I repeat my second question?
Yeah, if you could repeat.
Okay. It was just like over the internet, I've heard about like during an interview, like when you're being interviewed, there like you should also ask your interviewer questions, and I was just kind of like question mark.
I think you should. I think that if you're not asking them questions, it becomes a one-sided conversation. And Becca mentioned earlier how in your interview you want to show that you're able to hold a conversation. And if the interviewer feels like they are just having to pull information out of you, or it's a one-sided conversation, it's going to feel forced. You want that interaction to feel like it's flowing and like it's going well and it's natural. So try to add to the conversation throughout, but also know that you're going to have a chance at the end of the interview where the interviewer says, so do you have any questions for me? I mean, every interviewer asks that. So be prepared with some questions that relate to either their specific role, the future of your own role, what should you expect? And I think that if you also were paying a lot of attention during the interview, you're able to take things from that and turn it around at the end of the interview and ask them questions about it. You mentioned that you traveled earlier in the interview. You mentioned that you travel a lot for work, and how has that played into your work-life balance over the years? You've made it to this point in your career. How do you feel about work-life balance now, and what advice do you give young associates about work-life balance? Like, that's a really random example of how you could take something from the conversation and bring it back to the end, because that shows the interviewer, one, that you were listening to them. They'll appreciate that you were involved, and two, that you're curious, right? You're curious about them, about the company, about the role, showing that you're hungry to learn more. Those are things you want to demonstrate through your questions.
And just a quick last tidbit, 9 times out of 10, when you're applying for a role, you can ask your recruiter who's ever setting up the interview for the names of the people interviewing you. And that's when you take to LinkedIn, you search them up, you figure out their education history or things that they've worked on or worked in, and then you can bring those up in your questions and say, well, Taylor, I saw that you started in X industry and now you're in Y industry. Why did you make the change, and how has that affected your outlook on the rest of your career? And you can take it from there. People love to talk about themselves. So the more you can pull from their past experiences and kind of intertwine them with your experiences, the better. Yeah,
absolutely. And if there are a few lingering questions, because I know these were some broad topics, maybe Murtaza, could folks email you with their questions and you kind of consolidate and then send to me and I'll respond?
Definitely. So I know it's almost time. It's a little bit over 7 o'clock. If you all do have any questions, please feel free to email them over to me, and I'll definitely get a response back to you, by forwarding it over to Taylor and Rebecca. But before we do wrap up, I did want to give a huge thanks, a huge round of applause to Taylor and Rebecca for presenting today. You know, I'm sure they are very, very busy and they're really, really busy schedules working at Ernst & Young. So for them to take out, you know, time from the really busy schedules to join us and help all of us key clumbers in understanding career readiness, you know, great round of applause to you guys. And, you know, thank you so much to Rebecca and Taylor. But before we do end this presentation off, I did want to share the last slide, which will be our survey slide, as I mentioned in the beginning. So just to make sure I'm sharing my screen. Here we go. All right, so thank you all very much for joining us for the second installment of Keys to Your Future. We really want to make sure that we do get your feedback on how these, you know, presentations went. You know, your feedback is very, very valuable to us. And we know, you know, we really do want to make sure that we help you as much as possible with topics that you want to know. So we did provide our survey link below on this slide. I will paste it over into the chat. Give me 1 second. All right, everyone. So I did paste the survey link right in the chat. So if you could fill out that survey, it'll be a quick survey. It'll just take a minute or two. If you can fill that out right now, and then you all are free to go. But definitely thank